Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Great Expectations. Chapter 11, My Benefactor is Revealed. As the time passed after my 21st birthday, I was unable to keep the resolve I had made then, to stay out of debt and live on the £500 a year for my benefactor. In addition to the money I owed to Cleriker to complete the contract I had made on Herbert's behalf, I owed my tailor, wine merchant, jeweler, and many others. But I hope that with every birthday, larger properties would be transferred to be for my benefactor, where I would be able to pay all my debts at once. Then I would live in a really grand and expensive manner. I was 23 now and laughed at the Pip of 21 who I thought £500 a year was a great fortune. I never thought of the Pip who was once convinced that a blacksmith in Kent was the most desirable position in the world. I was no longer tutored, but instead read regularly many hours a day. On one particular night, I was at home reading because Herbert was away on a business trip, and the weather was too stormy for me to go out. The clock at St. Paul's Cathedral struck 11, disturbing my concentration. Then footsteps on the stairs disturbed me even more. Because the wind had blown out the lamps on the staircase, I took my reading lamp on the door. As my light flashed into the entryway, the footstep stops. I looked down the staircase, calling out, "Who's there? What do you want?" "I'm a-looking for Mr. Pip," answered the man, coming up into the light. When he saw me, the stranger's face lit up. His clothes were rough, but good enough, and he had long, iron gray hair. I guessed he was about 60, though he had a large, muscular body. As he came at me, he held out his sunburned hands. "I don't know what to make of this," and I said, "Yes, I'm Pip. What is it? What business do you have with me?" Yes, my business. I'll explain." He paused, and I understood he expected to be invited in. I did so in an abrupt manner, for I didn't understand the happiness that shone from his face, and that he seemed to demand the same response from mine. He looked about the parlor with a gratified smile, then held out his hands again. I began to suspect he might be mad, so I backed away. "I understand," he said. "It's not your fault, but it's a disappointing reception after I come so far and look so forward much to this meeting with you." The man threw off his coat and hat and sat in a chair by the fire, stretching out his hands and plain looking over his shoulder at me. He asked, "Is anyone around?" "What right do you have to ask me that?" I returned heatedly. "You, a stranger coming into my rooms at this time of night?" He shook his head and grinned with affection. "You're a brave one," he cried. "I'm glad you grow up to be a brave one." And then, like a bolt of lightning, it came to me who he was. My convict from the churchyard in the marshes of Kent. He saw the recognition in my face and came to me again with his hands outstretched. Hardly realizing that I was doing it, I put out my hands. He grasped them heartily and then kissed them. "You acted nobly, my boy," he said, "and I have never forgotten that noble Pip." As he was about to embrace me, I held a hand against his chest and pushed him away. "If you have come to thank me, it was not necessary," I said. "If I helped you as a child, I hope your gratitude has led you to a reformed way of life. But in any case, I cannot offer you any protection now." He backed away and looked at me around. With his eyes resting on the roll of bottles on the sideboard, I said at once, "But perhaps you'll have a warming drink before you leave?" "Ah, whiskey," he said, sitting down. I served both of us, then said, "How have you been living these past years?" "I've done wonderful in the New South Wales. I'm a sheep farmer. And how can I be so bold to ask how you have done since we were shivering on the marshes?" Reluctantly, I told him my story. When I finished, he said quietly, "May I guess your income since you came of age?" "I would say £500 a year." He looked at me steadily. Though he spoke softly, his words entered my being like I screamed and trembled. "I suppose someone has been taking care of all this, a go-between?" he asked. "And would his first initial of that person be J?" I could not speak. I felt as if I were suffocating and gripping a table for support, and still he went on. "In fact, isn't that person's name Jaggers and his clerk's name Wemmick?" My head was reeling so, and I had to feel my way back to the sofa, where I fell back into the cushions. He helped me sit up, and dropped me on one knee before me. Yes, dear boy, I've made a gentleman of you, he exclaimed. It's me what has done it. I swore that every cent I earned should go to you. When I earned the pounds, I lived rough so you should live smooth. I shrank away from him as if he were some terrible beast. I dreaded him. He went on, You're more to me than a real son could be, Pip. Many a lonely night, after herding sheep, I'd be eating my solitary meal, and your face would come to me, and I'd say to myself, Here's that boy again, looking at me while I eats and drinks like he done in the marshes. And then I swear again I'd make a gentleman of you that put life back in me once. And I done it. He looked around with pleasure, the oriental rug, the painting, my elegant clothes, the ruby ring I bore, and the books. I sat speechless as he went on. I'm famous for having pulled myself up in New South Wales. They point out behind my back for the convict I've been, but only I knew what I owed a gentleman, which is more than any of them did. What kept me going was that I knew someday I'd come back to see my boy and make myself known to him. In his triumphant excitement, he did not notice how I dreaded to touch him with that what misery I received his elevation. Finally he said, Where will I sleep, dear boy? I've had a long, dangerous journey. My roommate is away. You can have his bed. I said when my voice returned, But how do you mean dangerous? The authorities will hang me if they find me back in London, he said simply. I immediately closed all the curtains and led him to Herbert's room, sick at heart that he had risked his life to see me. Also sick at heart because I could not feel any tenderness for him. Before I left for the night, I asked, Then there's no other but you? He looked at me in surprise. No, dear boy, only me. Then went my dream of Estella. So Miss Havisham had not singled me out to be Estella's husband. I was just her useful escort, someone to play with cruelly as the old one had trained her to do so. I sat looking into the dying fire until far into the morning, more wretched than I had ever been. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. See you later.